In this tutorial, I want to demonstrate binning using the IFS function. And so we're back with our Titanic passenger data. And we're going to do binning based on the age. And so first, let's explore this column. So if we select the column and we insert some type of a chart. Now in the past when we've done this and selected recommended charts, Excel has been very kind to us, and there's times when it's not. It just can't figure out what's going on. In this case, there's just too many values here, not number of rows, but separate values. So categories, if you will, each number being treated as a category itself. And so Excel's just a little confused about what to do here. And so we'll just go to all charts and we'll select this column chart, which will give us some information, right? Some usable information. For binning purposes, we're going to group by age, and we're going to take ages 1 to 9 as one bin. So binning is exactly what it sounds like. It's like you set up a bunch of bins and you look at a number and you throw it in that bin. So we'll have a 1 to 9, a 10 to 19, a 20 to 29, and so on and so forth. And the data is not sorted, and so it's all over the place. But what this really tells us is we've got a number of young people here. We can see that. And looks like we've got a couple in the 70 range, but one in the 80 range, maybe exactly 80. There's a value. So we need to go up through that bin for the 80 to 89 range. So that's enough information for us, and we can just get rid of this. Don't need to retain it. I'm going to add another column here. Now, because we're binning, let's call this age bins. I'm going to enter the IFS statement. And I've demonstrated in the past with category reduction how to use the if statement with embedded if statements. And you could certainly do the same here, but there's an advantage to using the IFS statement, so multiple criteria, and that is that once Excel finds the answer kind of in order, we'll put them in order, then it stops. And so equals IFS. Now the model of this is we want to look at the age, so E2, and we want to know if it's less than. So I'm going to start with the lowest bin. So I'm going to start with is it less than 10, and if it is, I'm going to create a bin called 1 to 9. Okay, perhaps we should, oops, I meant to edit something here. Perhaps we should call that 0 to 9. Okay, and so we've got our IFS. We can see that we've got our logical test if E2 is less than 10, and then we have our value if true. And when I hit enter, notice that, well, there's no value because there was no result. This is not less than 10. So let's drag it down to here and see if it actually works. It does. So that's in the category of 0 to 9. Well, what we need to do is simply complete this. So we're going to continue to type E2 less than 20, and we're going to create the bin of 10 to 19. And E2 less than 30 and create the bin of 20 to 29. And let's just test this. Now, again, I've done something wrong, and Excel is kind to tell me that I've done something wrong, but it doesn't always tell me where the error is. In fact, it usually doesn't tell me where the error is. Unfortunately, it's saying somewhere the error is in here. Typically, the error is prior to that, so E2 less than 30 looks good. Oh, look, I forgot a quotation mark here. So this is an example of troubleshooting. And notice once I fixed that the E2 was recognized as a cell location, that without that it doesn't. So that's a clue to the problem as well. So there we go. We have that one's in the 20 to 29, and we should be able to get those that are in that range are working. So we'll just continue to expand this to get all of our bins. Now, notice that I keep going back up to this original cell and then copying down. You want to make sure when you're building solutions like this that you don't edit these cells here, but that you edit your primary cell and always copy it down to make sure it's working in all of the cells that it's supposed to work in. So if E2 is less than 40, we're going to call it the bin of 30 to 39. And in fact, I should be able to see that it works as I drag it down here. And indeed it does. So I'm going to copy that to all of my cells here, my entire range. And again, I'm just selecting Shift, Control, and the down arrow to get clear to the bottom of my data, row 888. And I'm selecting the last row, Shift, Control, up arrow. And then I just have to hold the Shift down and the Shift key down, and press the up arrow at the same time until I get to that cell that I was making the changes in, and just below that, and then I'm going to copy it to all of those locations. So, and then Control up arrow to get to the top. So now I've created my bins, and I can do my counts. So we'll do our counts, and I have to create all of those bins here so that when I do my count if, that it has something to look at. Now, here's an interesting thing, and this Excel has a lot of automatic features for us that help us out, and typically if I would type 10-19, I might mean October 19th, but in this case I don't, so I'm going to have to put the single quotation key, upper left on your keyboard, and 10-19 to force Excel, oops, I did the wrong one. Single quotation, it's next to the enter on the right side of the keyboard, and it's a straight up and down, 10-19, and that forces Excel to interpret that as the string that it is. Okay, and now I can create my count if, excuse me, equals count if. Now, my range is going to be those bins that I've selected here. And then it was, I'm guessing here, maybe K6. I can't see it in front of me, so I type it in, and I guessed correctly. There are 71 of children between 0 and 9. People on board. And so I want to change this to an absolute reference on my rows, because I'm going to copy this down so that it works for all of these. And I can copy this down, and here we go. So I can see how many are in each bin. Now I can go ahead and plot this out, create a visualization, go up here and insert the recommended chart, which is simply a clustered column chart, and this makes sense. So I'll say OK, and there you go. I have my age bins, we'll call it, and I can see that graphically. Okay? So I want to demonstrate another way of doing this, and to do that I'm going to slide this chart down, and over here I'm going to create, let's narrow that up and go a little bit this direction for what we're doing here. So I'm going to create the upper bounds of all of those bins over here, and we're going to use a feature that allows us to create a histogram and the data associated with it automatically. Now, first of all, I want to illustrate how not to do this. So if I select all of my data over here on the age column, like I had originally done, and Shift Control down arrow to get all my data here, and ask Excel to give the recommendation, here's what we have here. And one of those options is a histogram. And if we look at this, it can be a little confusing, not exactly sure what they're suggesting here. Maybe that's age, maybe it's not. Yeah, it's age. We could dig into this, and I'll show you as we move further that we can gain some understanding from this. And that is that if we go over here and we edit this right here, if we format the axis, on the right-hand side, we can see that it is automatic bins. Now remember, the bins are the buckets, and we decided that the size of the bucket was 0 to 9, 10 to 29, that type of thing. So you could change this to number of bins. Let's say we wanted 9 bins, and that's closer to what we had, but still looks rather odd. We could go bin width, and we could change that. To 10, and that looks close to what we have created with our IFS function and then the count if. And now it's a little easier to see what's going on. Oh, the youngest person is 0.42. So with this feature, with this insert a chart and using the histogram, Excel is going to count from the very first individual, first lowest value, right? So the lowest value in this case is 0.42. Well, that doesn't make good cutoffs. It's just kind of sloppy. So we're not going to use that. We'll get rid of that. Now, let's talk about the right way to do this. Control up arrow to get back to the top. So I've created the upper bounds of my bins that I want. And what I'm going to do is actually go over to the Data tab and the Data Analysis ToolPak that you've installed, and I'm going to select Histogram. Now, mine's selected already. If it wasn't, you could just scroll through here and find it. So select Histogram. I'm going to click OK. Now, again, mine is filled out because I was playing around with this before I demonstrated it. So let's just do it this way to show you what it'll look like in the process. So I need my input range, and that's going to be my data. So I'm going to go up here and shift control down arrow to get all my data and hit enter. And then I need my bin range. Okay, so those were the upper thresholds that I entered. So I'm going to come over here. Now I'm clear at the bottom, so I'm simply going to drag this to the top, and I need to select my bin ranges and hit enter. And then I want the output range. I want it to show on this worksheet for us. And so I'm going to select P, let's go with 4, because there's some headers associated with this. And I want the chart output. By default, this would be unselected. I want to have a chart output. So when I say OK, notice what it does here. And I'll slide this over and move this. It creates those bins for us, and it gives us the populations. Now, I'm a little bit off here in my alignment, so let me insert a row, insert and shift the cells down so that you can see indeed that the values are the same as I go through here, right? Now, this more is because if there were any outside of the bin ranges that I identified, then it would tell me how many are left over and dump those in the more bin. But notice I have a nice histogram that's been created. And in many ways, that's much easier than using the IFS and the COUNTIF. Nonetheless, learning to use IFS as well as COUNTIF and creating your own charts is beneficial. Learning how to use the Analysis ToolPak is also beneficial. So now it's time to practice.